Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Timothy, can you hear me?
Yes, loud
Good
and
deal.
clear.
Okay,
Mary.
I'm sorry I don't have audio. That they have us very locked down in the UNC healthcare system, and I decided to do it in my office. Hopefully in the spring, we will be at Tammy's new library or somewhere else and not have a online Zoom meeting. Do want to remind everybody that due to the streaming of the meeting and it being available on YouTube, that we will conduct a roll call for the attendance. And also, if you want to speak, please identify yourself by name so the folks taking the minutes will have that. I'll do a roll call for everybody's attendance. Tammy Baggett is here. I've seen Tammy. Anna Betts, I don't see that she's on. Rachel is here. Leanne, I believe, is here. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Leanne.
Hello.
You're like me. We just can't see you. And I brushed my hair and everything.
I apologize.
It's all right. Me too. Barbara Pendry is here. Dorothy Rapp is here. Jimmy's here. Michael's here. Lori Russell. Is Lori on?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Hey, Lori. Libby Stone. Don't think Libby's on, right?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Oh, okay. Hey, Libby. I'm sorry.
Hey, no problem.
And, Karen Wallace is here from Bryson City. I want to go ride the train. And Suzanne is joining us as a guest today. And I believe Ricky Woods has not signed on. Is that correct?
Oh, it looks like he just joined.
Oh, hello there, Ricky. Welcome to the meeting. Hey, he's on. Okay, just as we call his name for attendance. Okay. So we have, I think, the attendance straight. And then we had the minutes were circulated via email in advance of the meeting. Are there any corrections? Okay, being that there are no corrections, can we have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I'll move. Dorothy.
Okay, Dorothy moves for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Dr.
Okay,
Wood seconds.
second it. Okay, Timothy, do we need to do a roll call for the minutes?
Yes, we should.
Okay, all right, Tammy. I'm doing alphabetical order. Tammy Baggett. All right, if you'll say yes or no if you approve the minutes. Tammy might be muted.
Yes.
Okay. Anna Betts, I don't believe it's on. Rachel.
Yes.
Okay, Leanne.
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
Dorothy.
Yes.
Jimmy.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Libby.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Ricky.
Yes.
And yes for Mary Bartlett too. Okay, the minutes are now approved. Thank you, everybody. All right, Timothy, you're up to bat with the state library update.
All right, and I am going to attempt to share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see that. Although I miss seeing everybody's faces while I'm talking here. But welcome, and it is so good to see everyone. I did not think back when we had our virtual meeting in May that we would still be meeting virtually in October, but here we are. At least we can be together. And so as much as I have Zoom fatigue, it is useful in these situations. So I'm glad we can see everybody. Starting out with our state library update, just a reminder of our vision and mission statement from the new strategic plan and our goals: access, community, education, where we are trying to maximize use of our resources, break down barriers, and increase engagement. And I forget about the fancy transitions. Starting with some legislative updates, and this will be pretty brief since they went home without a budget for this year. So for the second year of the biennium, we have no budget, which means we are flat at the recurring amounts from the previous year. We haven't received our certified budget yet, but we expect to have the same funds available. One thing that this did mean was that there was no money available for NC kids, unfortunately, in the state budget. But the legislature did appropriate some of the CARES Act funding, some of that $3.5 billion that the federal government provided to the state for expenditure. And so $400,000 were appropriated by the legislature for NC kids. And they are just in the process now of spending those funds. According to the legislation, those have to be expended by December 30th. So NCPLDA is our partner in that initiative, and they already started purchasing materials. I think they've purchased 2,000 titles so far as of September 30th, and they'll continue to spend those funds until that's used up. So we were fortunate to be able to have that contribution to NC Kids. The legislature comes back in January, and not sure what that's going to look like. The word I've heard is, at least for this current year, there was some additional revenue above the projections that was received that will be enough to carry through for this current fiscal year. So our budget should be okay at the level, that flat funded level for this year, but we'll see when the legislature comes back. And that's what I know about legislative updates at this point. So, and we will see. There's an election next week. Not sure how that will impact things either. Just wanted to let folks know who may not that as of July 1st, there are 2 additional public libraries eligible for state aid funding. Carteret County Public Library, which was formerly in the CPC Regional Library, and Given Memorial Library in Pinehurst. So we're now at 84 public libraries that are eligible to receive state aid. And then moving into the state library, we do have a couple of new staff. And these, I have to give kudos to their supervisors and their units for onboarding new staff during this pandemic when we are continuing to work remotely. So these folks have been onboarded remotely and are starting their jobs with remote service. We have Melissa Glass, who is a production assistant at the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. And we have Anna Peitzman, who is joining the Cardinal Project as an NC Cardinal Project Manager. And we have another LBPH position that is currently being interviewed and recruited for, who we hope to have on board soon, and a position in the Government and Heritage Library that we are hoping, an administrative assistant position that we are hoping to reclassify up to a library technician position. So I would certainly hope by the next meeting that we'll have those positions filled as well. And then a few new information resources. Again, as libraries and the state library have shifted to all this remote service, we've been increasingly relying on digital collections. And we were fortunate this summer to be able to purchase 3 newspaper collections: the News and Observer Archive, which covers the historic newspapers from 1879 forward, the Charlotte Observer, the historic collection for that from 1886, and the Southeast newspaper collection, which includes the Asheville Citizen Times. So we're happy to have those collections now available. I've given you the link. You do have to have a library card, and I think we made sure all of the commission members have a library card with the Government and Heritage Library, but if you don't, reach out and we will make sure that you are connected that way. And again, those library cards are available to citizens across the state with the change in legislation a few years ago that allowed residents to be able to get library cards. Another information resource, this is one that ProQuest is making available freely, and we'll be linking to that. Primary sources on the struggle for freedom. So it's a great collection. And again, as we try to expand and diversify our collections, we're happy to have that resource available. And that does not require a library card. Other resources to talk, or information resources to talk about, election 2020. In case you forgot, next week is election day, or if you haven't watched the news lately. We did have with LD, Lauren Clossy and Linda Reynolds, worked to promote the ALA's National Voter Registration Day. And there were 61 public libraries who participated in that at some level. Following on that, the success of that, we also added some voter tools and resources to our website. So these are some nonpartisan, of course, some trustworthy information, links to state elections information, and some other sources that can help voters navigate the election this year. With the shift to remote work, early this summer, we did acquire an online reading platform, Read Squared, which is available to all the public libraries in the state. It's available year-round. I know some did adopt it for their summer reading program. Libraries can still sign up. They can use it for other reading programs throughout the year. We partner with the North Carolina Humanities Council for the North Carolina Center for the Book, and are working and hoping that we'll be able to leverage that platform for some additional reading programs working with them. So if libraries haven't signed up yet or are not using Read Squared, that is a resource that we are making available. Adult services, just after the meeting, I think, we received the final report of the environmental scan that Noah Lenstra completed last year. This, as we are increasing our focus on adult services. And so Jeffrey Hamilton has been working with adult programming. And so this year we expect to see some results out of that report as programming and professional development are implemented to address the findings of that. But if you're interested in adult services, adult programming, I'd encourage you to take a look at least at the executive summary of that, and then watch for some professional development opportunities in the coming year. Another statewide effort, and Linda Reynolds, our public management consultant, is leading this, is the revision of the public library standards. This was a document created initially in 2012. We're updating it to make it more useful, to include some benchmarks, to give a little more guidance and be more useful to public libraries. So we have hired a consultant, just engaged a consultant. We have a target completion date of May 31st of 2021. That's a hard year for me to say. It's hard to believe we're at 2021 around the corner. And also there will be some opportunities for participation of the State Library Commission. So this is a call for volunteers, a call for interest, can serve. We can have an opportunity for a focus group sometime in the winter, sometime before the end of January. Also an opportunity for a member of the commission to serve on the working group that will help guide this project through the year. So if any of you are interested in either providing feedback in a focus group or possibly serving on the working group, please let me know, because we do want to have some representation. We turn to this group for guidance and advice, and this is a great opportunity for you to have your input. And additionally, there will be some public library directors. There are a number of other members of the working group, and there will be other focus groups as well, but definitely want to get some input from the commission. The SLNC Academy, our online learning portal, mentioned this last time at the May meeting. We had just launched it at the end of February, just before we pivoted to remote work and remote work across the state. And so that was very timely and has continued to grow. And we're averaging about 3,500, I think, engagements each month with the online learning resources. Library development staff have been creating modules for this. There's trustee training, there's a state aid module. There also will be working on racial equity and social justice modules for this. But this has been very popular. Unsurprisingly, one of the most popular resources to date has been de-escalating COVID-19 customer behaviors. That one's getting a lot of play and has been for a few months. And customer service and de-escalation are very popular resources there. But this is available to libraries across the state, and any of you are welcome to check out those resources. You just create an account and away you go with learning, and then you can track your learning and see what's available there. LBPH, before COVID, had planned a summer reading program. Some of the communications about that were delayed because of the pandemic and when we all went home to work. So they are shifting to a winter reading program. The adult program is planned to kick off on December 10th, and that will be around the book, How the Post Office Created America, with Bill Stepien who's been doing some work with Charlotte libraries. And the youth program will kick off December 15th, and they have Joe Sundell, who will be kicking that off with a program on folk songs and folk tales. So they have been slightly delayed, but are moving forward with their reading programs. Another item of interest, and I don't know that we have shared this in the past, but the Marrakesh Treaty, this actually was ratified by the US in 2019. It was World Intellectual Property Organization passed it in 2013, but it took the US a while to get there. But this treaty provides for the exchange of accessible format books across international borders, so that countries can share those resources. It's a pass on the copyright laws, so that makes it for accessible versions of these materials. Now, the National Library Service out of DC, the Library of Congress, they are working on a pilot project to implement this exchange of accessible format materials. It's not quite as simple as just sharing a digital file electronically. So there are format issues, and for example, if someone in the US wanted to borrow something, it would have to be through the National Library Service, it would have to be in their barred format, in that format, so that it would be limited to the readership who has been certified eligible for it. So our library, LBPH, has been invited to participate in a pilot program to work through the implementation of the Marrakesh Treaty. That was supposed to happen earlier this year, another COVID casualty, and we're looking at the pilot project happening over the winter. So they will be working with the project to see how it works for translating these, downloading them, translating them into a format that we can use with our borrowers, and that does limit it to the eligible population. But that'll be pretty exciting and will open up a world of possibilities for folks, especially looking for materials in other languages. So as we can borrow across the border. So that's going to be pretty exciting to see. And we will keep you posted as that moves forward. Talked about the homework gap project before. This is the state library received a 2-year national leadership grant from IMLS. And we have our digital inclusion librarian, Abby Waldrop, who is working on that project. We're in the end of the 2nd year, so it was wrapping up, but we were given an additional supplemental award of $100,000 that will help us carry that project through December of 2021. So we're really excited about that opportunity. Abby now is completing the toolkit for digital readiness that was part of the original grant. And then next year we'll pivot to online instruction for the students. So shifting the modules online as a response to COVID-19, where before we were having in-person training sessions with the pilot libraries. Now we're going to shift to a model that includes some online training and digital navigators to assist online, since we're not able to do the in-person events at this point. But that was really a great treat to be able to get that additional supplement for the award. So we're very happy about that. NC Cardinal continues to thrive. It's now serving in 51 counties. We have 40 public library systems, so just under half of the public libraries. Their student access project is really taking off. 400,000 accounts. Last year, there were 85,000 checkouts. We have 3 systems to join this coming year: Onslow County, Amy Regional, and Burke County. Carteret County was on this list, but they joined a little earlier over the summer. And so the Cardinal folks are still working away, and that continues to be a popular service. Now I'll talk a little bit about some more money. Our LSTA, Library Services and Technology Act program. And I'll actually talk about some other LSTA funds in a little bit when we talk about broadband and when we talk about COVID as well. But just to talk about our regular grant program. So for this current fiscal year, we awarded 49 grants totaling over $2 million. We have the list of awards available. I think we shared, at the last meeting, we shared the number of applicants, and we were just in the review process, but those were announced in June. Really happy to provide that funding. And so those projects are underway, and I think some folks on the call today are recipients of some of those funds. I know Fontana had a print project. Durham County was looking at translation of their website into Spanish. So again, this removing barriers and increasing access. And Catawba County had community navigators working with at-state students in the School of Social Work to connect their patrons to useful information. So we're looking forward to seeing results over the course of this current year of those grants. We also have just in September announced the 21-22 grant program. It was hard enough to think of 2021, but now we're thinking of 2022. Again, following our standard process and grant program, we have 2 types of grants: easy grants, which are single-year projects, minimum $5,000 to a maximum of $50,000. Project grants, which can be single or multi-year, that are a minimum of $50,000 to a maximum of $100,000 for single year, or $150,000 per year for multi-year projects. So that grant information has been posted to our website. Again, the eligible libraries are public libraries eligible for state aid, community college libraries, the UNC system libraries, and the libraries in the NC independent colleges and universities. So those applications are out there. The deadlines, actually one is looming just around the corner. For the project grants, it's a two-step process. They require an initial letter of intent. Those letters of intent are due on November 1st. So Sunday, I understand that yes, as of yesterday, we had received 3 grants, and we expect that we'll receive many more over the course of the next few days. Not that everybody waits until the last minute to do these things, but we do expect to have more. Now then, the easy projects don't require a letter of intent, but the full proposals for EZs and project applications are due March 1st of 2021. And so we'll be interested to see that. And we have the LSTA Advisory Committee ready to weigh in on those. And in December, we'll be reviewing or actually November and early December, reviewing those letters of intent. And then libraries will be invited to apply for those full projects. You can see more information about those online. Our CE scholarship. So last year we had a pilot program to make it more of a first come, first serve option for applying for CE scholarships. We've continued that this year. There's a quarterly intake period for the applications. The next deadline is December 1st, and that's for events in February, March, and April. So we have in-state conference and learning opportunities. We have out-of-state, and knowing that the current situation and where we are with most conferences, actually all conferences that I've seen, being shifted to a virtual event at this point, we have included virtual conferences and learning opportunities that libraries can apply for. So libraries are applying for those, and the next deadline is December 1st. Now, at our last meeting, we talked about communications, and that was a big piece of our strategic plan to improve our communications and work on our communications planning. Just a few updates that I wanted to share. We are in the process of working on a new state library website. I personally will be happy to see a new website. I can't seem to find anything on our website, or it takes a lot of poking around. So I'm eager for that. We've had some feedback. There have been some surveys. They're now in the process working with DIT, the state DIT, on that upgrade and the new website. And I'm hopeful that there may be an opportunity over the winter as we prepare to launch that we'll be able to get some feedback from commission members. So here's another opportunity for you if you are interested and would like to provide feedback on the website. Please let us know, because we would love to have your feedback once we get to that next phase of development of the website. Listservs. So the state DIT has informed us earlier, a couple of months ago, that they would be stopping support for mailman listservs, which is the platform we use for our state library supported listservs. We have CE listserv. We work with NCPLDA for theirs, several adult services, youth services. We are in the process of transitioning those. They had given us an initial deadline of October 31st, but then they have extended that, and so it's through the end of the year that we have the mailman current listserv software, but we will be transitioning over the next, mostly in November, but over the next month and a half, our existing listservs. And I have a question for the group. We do not have a listserv specifically for the State Library Commission, but if there is interest in this group in having a discussion list, and this would be a way so that we would have two-way communications, be able to share information in both directions. If you would be interested in us establishing one, we could even try it out if you'd like, but to have a State Library Commission listserv let me know. I can't see everybody at once right now. Well, maybe I can. No. But feel free to provide some feedback on that, because that is an option. Then the final item, we mentioned last meeting that we had ceased with the, I've not been watching chat. Okay, so I should have had chat up. Sorry, I'm stepping back just briefly. Okay, it looks like there would be there is interest in establishing a listserv for the State Library Commission, is what I'm sensing from that feedback. So we will do that. And actually, we may put this as one of the early ones just to pilot and test and see. And our chair has agreed. So I think that's a strong endorsement. So we will, we'll make that happen. Then the final piece on here, I mentioned at the last meeting that we had ceased our monthly report. It was not being very impactful. And so we called that off. In addition to the listservs that have a lot of active communication, we have some listservs that are more one-way announcements from the State Library. So we are in the process of acquiring MailChimp, and we'll be transitioning some of those lists over to MailChimp so that we can have that distribution easily and segment according to subjects. But we also anticipate using that for some general communications about the State Library, and that will be, in part, take up some of what we used to communicate with the monthly report. But the email marketing I have on here, just to get as a heads up, that will be changing, will be shifting a bit. And so watch for the opportunity to sign on for some email lists in that MailChimp lists and announcements. And another point that I didn't put on here, but I shared last time, the Facebook, that we had a soft launch. We are continuing to boost our Facebook presence and Twitter and social media generally. And so we are going to continue to work on our communications through social media. So expect to see more. And with yeah, and I'll leave it at that. And with that, open to questions. Let me see if I can get back to that slide. Any questions on this first segment? Feel free. I've learned to watch chat, sort of, but feel free to unmute yourself and speak if you have a comment or question about anything we've covered.
I got one quick question, Tim.
Yes, sir.
Could you update me again on what the qualifications are for North Carolina Cardinal for libraries to be able to participate in that?
That is open to public libraries. There's an application process each year as part of, I didn't spell it out specifically in the LSTA grant. There are no specific limits, but libraries apply through the LSTA process for a cardinal migration, a grant to migrate, and then that potentially gets them in the queue for becoming a cardinal library. So other than being eligible for being a public library eligible for state aid, there are no other limits, but the other limits that we have are just the capacity of how many libraries we can take on at one time. And so that's the route. Does that answer?
Yep, it does.
Okay. Any other questions?
Timothy.
Yeah, Timothy, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes, Carl.
It goes back to the voter registration
Mhm.
activities at different libraries. And I think you said 61 libraries participated. Is that correct?
That's correct. 61
Yeah.
participated at some level, and that there was a variety of ways that they could participate. Some just by sharing information on their website, some holding events, or it was a variety.
Okay. So it was a spectrum of
It was.
different things. Okay.
It was, and that was following on the American Library Association National Voter Registration Day project.
And not every library participated.
No, but a majority did.
Do you know why others did not?
That I do not know.
Okay.
It was all volunteer. We just sent out a call for participation, but didn't gather any information on
Okay.
why. But that's a good question that we can certainly follow up with some.
Well, I'm wondering if COVID had some kind, of influence on that, or how it compares even to other voting years. But
yeah,
okay.
and I think that very well could have had an impact on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is an unusual year.
I'll say.
Timothy, this is Michael Roach.
Yes, Michael.
2 points. I would one would be a question. If I'm an NC Cardinal library, so I don't have a problem with this, but the state, if all of the commissioners have a state library card, they're a part of NC Cardinal. And if their library is not a part of it, how do they get books from us?
Well, their books would come through the state library card. They would come through the Government and Heritage Library.
But how would they get?
So that would be, well, they'd have to come visit us in Raleigh.
Okay. And
although we're not circulating, but we're not circulating to our users right now.
Yep. Dorothy was asking about the participation in the voting thing. Rockingham, I didn't respond to the thing, but I work closely with the Board of Elections here, because I work with them some, but we're also early voting sites for 2 of my branches. And what we have, 2 of my libraries also are voting places on election day. And I can tell you, we've been swamped. Both of my libraries that do early voting have been packed all day long. So I might not have been a part of that 61, but we've been dealing with voting, continuously. So, there's a lot of different ways to participate.
That's true.
And from the numbers I'm hearing, lots of folks are participating in early voting.
Yeah.
Which is very encouraging.
Our
I like to
library
think the libraries have single-handedly increased that.
Our library is usually a site for early voting, and it had to change this year because of the requirements for COVID, social distancing, and so on. But what we found too is that it also having the library as a voting place, it stops so many of our after school programs and other things that are outreach to community. So it's kind of, it makes it difficult, puts an extra strain on the library.
It's always a balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, great questions, great points. Anything else before we move to the next segment? Hearing none, next on our playlist is broadband initiatives. And if COVID-19 has done nothing else, it has demonstrated the importance of access to broadband connectivity. And it's really highlighted the haves and have-nots and the digital divide. And so just a few minutes to talk about some of the initiatives that are addressing that broadband. We talked about CARES Act funding, and so this is the IMLS, as part of the federal CARES Act, IMLS was appropriated $50 million. $30 million of that they distributed through the Grants to States program, so through our regular Grants to States LSTA funds. And so they did that according to the typical formula, since that was already in place, and our allotment was about $970,000. So they wanted us to quickly just get this money out and make an impact. I mentioned earlier that the state funds had to be expended by December 30th. Our LSTA funds, fortunately, we have a full year through the end of next September to expend all of those funds. So for our funding, we used our existing structure of a program and have easy grants of up to $10,000 for small focus projects, hotspots, devices. And then we had a grant category for project grants up to $75,000. Those were more complex and initiatives that required a partnership. And I should say for both of these grants, we did not require any matching funds. Typically, we require a match for our LSTA program. The CARES funds came to us without a requirement for any match, so we passed them through without a requirement for any match. So we opened up our grant program, had a July deadline for receipt of those grants. We received 56 applications requesting over $1.6 million. And I mentioned that we had 900 roughly thousand, so almost twice as much in demand as we could supply for these. In the end, we were able to fund 39 projects to help students, families, and job seekers. There's a list of awards that's available on our website. We funded nine projects and project grants and 30 of the easy grants. And it was a mix going to public libraries, community colleges, independents, and the UNC system. So we had a variety of recipients and some really interesting projects out there. And a couple of the folks on this in the meeting today were recipients of projects. And so I wanted to ask them to share just a little bit about theirs so you could get a flavor for what it is. And I'm gonna start with Karen, since Fontana received both an easy grant and a project grant. So Karen, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a brief bit about your projects and where you are.
Sure. We were really pleased to receive both grants that we applied for. We got close to the max on both grants. And in the EASY grant, we applied to get funding to extend our Wi-Fi signal outside our buildings. We're in an area where lots of people do not have broadband or any internet access at all. Sometimes they don't have cell service either. So we knew that we could really have an impact in helping people get access. So we've always had 24/7 access at our libraries. And we know that we get high usage even when we're not open. We ran some reports to take a look at that. And these days, about 30% of our Wi-Fi use happens when our libraries are not open. So we know that that's a really important service that we can provide to people regardless if our doors are open or not. And all of our libraries are open to the public at this point. So we're getting Wi-Fi use inside as well as outside. But the grant will allow us to extend that signal so that people can use that in the parking lots. And some of our buildings don't have space right up next to the building to be able to use computers or tablets or phones. But I regularly see people parked at our buildings as close as they can in order to get a signal. I'll see them after hours, Sunday afternoons, anytime. So this grant will really be a boon to job seekers, to students, to community members who just don't have access at home or at work. The other grant that we got was a project grant. And again, we were funded at almost the 75,000 for that. And we've worked closely with the schools in our 3 counties in Jackson, Macon, and Swain counties to acquire hotspots or jetpacks with management software that we can then loan these jetpacks to students who have been screened by the school system so that we know that they don't have adequate internet. They do have adequate cell signal in order to use the hotspot. And that's taken, it's definitely a little bit more challenging to have a partner in grants. And we, of course, had several partners because we're a 3-county region. So trying to get all the information that we needed from the school systems in order to maximize the use of these hotspots has taken us a little while, but we are just about to deploy those hotspots now. So we're really grateful to State Library and to IMLS for making these funds available. It really should make quite a difference to people in our community. And it really gave us a great opportunity to work more closely with our school IT departments. And we learned a lot in the process. So we too got an opportunity to learn. And we're very looking forward to how those are going to work for the students.
That's great. Thank you, Karen. And Michael, Rockingham received one.
Yes, so I might have to compete a little bit with Karen. We got $9,996 from you guys.
You should
I
have
don't
gone for
know
the full 10,000.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure why they couldn't do the other $4. I just didn't understand that. But the good thing, as a kudos to the State Library, they're very easy to work with. When you get a grant, and sometimes things just don't work out 100%, so you have to make changes. And they're very easy to work with when you need to make a change. For instance, we had to make a change because we were going to do like Karen did, extend our Wi-Fi. But before we even applied for the grant, the county came in and put in external antennas, but they were going to take them out. And after we wrote the grant, got approved for it, they called us up and says, we're not taking out your extenders. We're going to leave them in because they're being used. So we did ask the state if we could change that from external Wi-Fi to enhancing our internal Wi-Fi, which they said yes to. So that was great. And that's in process right now. But some of the other things, we got something called launch pads, which are like little tablets with preloaded software and books that kids can use to learn from and take home. We also got some Wonder books, which are kind of like talking books that you can open it up and you can have it. They have a little thing down in the corner, you hit it and it reads the book to the kids. And it helps, you can read along. So it does a lot of things like that. We got Dragon Naturally Speaking so that people can dictate to the computer instead of typing. Nuance to convert PDFs to regular Word documents or Excel spreadsheets type of thing. Walkie-talkies to help with communications when we had people outside, for curbside services. Some virtual reality glasses and programs, which are kind of neat. You put on this little device, you can't see out of it, but then again, you're seeing all this stuff in your vision. So, and we got some a tripod, memory card, video camera, some speakers for our youth services librarian who is going out and doing virtual programming. Is because we can't have the kids in and we can't have adult programs in. So she's doing programs, posting them to YouTube so that they can download them. And that's been really popular. So we like that. So all in all, I think the RCPOK, we didn't give the money away. We used the money. And I think it's being well used. And I want to say thanks to the State Library for helping us out with that.
And thanks to IMLS for providing that. And the new director, Crosby Kemper, was instrumental in that. I have to say, I think having that Crosby as a library person at the head of IMLS made a difference. And digital inclusion is a real focus of his, so he was happy to push for that. And that's what made it a priority for us. So thank you. I saw Dr. Woods had his hand raised a minute ago. Do you have a question?
I do. On this digital divide issue and working toward digital inclusion, quick question I have, do the grants that the library provide and that libraries receive allow them to leverage that to work with other groups in the community to further expand their internet capacity and closing that digital divide? I'm thinking in terms of if there's a potential partnership with a house of faith that's near the library, particularly addressing the whole issue of digital divide, or other nonprofits that the library might be able to work with through this grant and sort of leverage and further maximize that usage.
That was a possibility. And I know that in Amy Regional Library, they were looking at connecting some, making the hotspots available at some community sites, and I think at some churches as well for just that, to reach out into the community. So that was, that is possible. And some others I think were looking at community Wi-Fi. I know Wayne County did that as well to expand it into neighborhoods. And I think Catawba was looking at that as well.
We did that. We worked with some local, we worked with some public housing neighborhoods, with the soup kitchen and shelter, with some underserved neighborhoods in the community, worked with rec centers, our Centro Latino, and basically just created internet access for those locations.
Right.
And some training opportunities too.
Great.
Rockingham County, Michael again, did the same thing. Our bookmobile has good Wi-Fi, but we can't serve places that don't have good cell service. So it's one of those catch-22s. We want to go to a community, they don't have good cell service, we can't provide them with internet access. So we did go to several Walmart parking lots, and now that we're not going to Walmart while the library was closed, we go to places further out in the county and into some of the neighborhoods of less fortunate people that don't have internet access because they can't afford it. If they have a device like smartphones, things like that, we park where they can get access to it. And that's been, and that was actually an IMLS grant that helped us get the bookmobile, which provides that service. So I think the state library and IMLS has been really strong in saying help.
Well, if I could just say one other thing, Tim, I think that that's a story that somehow or another we need to get out further throughout the state in terms of what the state library has been doing and trying to close this digital divide during the pandemic. I think more of those kinds of stories need to be heard so the community will know those areas that are working in the midst of this pandemic.
Well, not only does the state need to do that, we need to do that better.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have more and more opportunities over this year to do just that. And I think it also is a testament to libraries being such good stewards of public monies that these opportunities come our way. And that, I think, with the LSTA funds, Congress knew how well those funds were expended. And so this was a natural place to distribute some of that money. So thank you, Karen and Michael, for that update, and Suzanne and Dr. Woods, thank you for the great question. I do want to mention another bit of that CARES fund. So I talked about the $30 million that was for the Grants to States program. So IMLS had an additional $20 million for some other efforts, and around 13.5 million they made available through their national leadership grants. And they had a competitive grant process for those $13.5 million. They had over 1,700 applications for funding. They were only able to fund 68 of those projects. And out of those 68, 3 projects came to North Carolina, and 2 of those were to North Carolina Library. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Chapel Hill Public Library. They received $149,000 in this program for whenever, wherever, whyever, technology access. And that's to serve folks with no reliable access to computers in their households. Also, Charlotte Mecklenburg received $492,000 for a multi-year project on neighborhood wireless internet service provider network. And this is in the West Boulevard neighborhood that they're going to be expanding that service for folks who don't otherwise have access to reliable internet access. Just in case you're curious, I mentioned there were 3. The Museum of Natural Sciences at Whiteville was the 3rd recipient. So 1 museum, and that was to provide Wi-Fi out in the neighborhood of the museum there. So really glad that North Carolina could be a recipient of some of those funds. So libraries are achieving. Then the last thing quickly that I'll mention on broadband initiatives is an effort called NC Student Connect. And this also came out of some CARES funding, but this was some of that funding that went directly to the state. And Student Connect is a partnership with the NC Department of Information Technology, the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, the Governor's Office, the Hometown Strong group project initiative out of the Governor's Office, the North Carolina Business Committee for Education, which also sits within the Governor's Office. And this group recognized the need for student support as they shifted, as students were actually just thrown out into the world of remote learning. And so there have been a few different initiatives under this. They're offering today, in fact, the Remote Education and Learning Conference, REAL Conference, for teachers, parents, and caregivers to help them with information resources and how to transition to remote learning. This is actually the 2nd instance of that. And we have a couple of state library staff who are presenting sessions at that conference. Abby Waldrop, our digital inclusion librarian, is presenting a session, as well as Jen Hampt, who is the head of content information and delivery in the state library. She's doing a session on history and research using our remote resources. So they're working with that. So there's an education component. There's also funding that's going in a couple of directions. One is funding for hotspot devices for students. And they have about $20 million, I think, that's available that they're using to purchase hotspots. An earlier survey indicated that about 192,000 students in the state do not have adequate access to broadband. Through this initiative, and we've been working with them, they have purchased 82,000 hotspots and distributed those to over 200 schools and school systems and charter schools around the state. We are working with them on that initiative. At one point, it was going to be through library lending. And I have to say, our project, our homework gap project, really highlighted this as a possible way of approaching this. And so they came back to us for assistance when they wanted to go with this hotspot route. And we talked about lending through libraries, but the volume, I'm glad they didn't, because this volume of hotspots would be a lot for libraries to manage. It also was quicker. They wanted to be a little quicker in getting them out in the hands of students. So working directly with the school systems to distribute those. They haven't all been distributed yet, but a number have. And I heard one story where a student would have to stand on a chair with the phone in the air to get a strong enough signal to do homework. And so this has provided some relief for that. The next component of this that's coming up will be Park and Learn, Wi-Fi outside, starting with some state sites, some of the historic sites, parks, and museums, getting hotspots for Park and Learn. That's coming up next. And then they'll move on to community sites, and there'll be some library sites included in that mix. Some libraries who haven't been able to provide Wi-Fi parking lot access yet will be included in the next round. So we're looking forward to that. This is part of that state funding that has to be expended by the end of the year, by December 30th. So they don't have quite the luxury that we have with our CARES grant distribution of the additional 9 months. But so compressed timeline, but really making an impact. And so we'll be excited to see how that goes. That was a race through broadband. Questions, comments, anything? Okay. Mary, do we want to see, what do you
Yes.
think about a break or no break?
What's everybody think? Do you need a break or do you want to keep plowing on? Okay, 5 minutes. I've got that it's 3:05, so let's try to be back by 3:10. Is that good? Then we'll try to get finished.
Excellent.
I'll stay. Okay, Timothy's going to talk about COVID-19. What's on the agenda at 3:10?
Which is a surprise topic. Who would think that we would, who would think we would discuss that? But yes, just some updates. I'm going to start with talking about the state library. As you know, we pivoted to all remote work in March. And as a few of us were saying early before the meeting today, at that time we thought, oh, it's going to be just a few weeks, or maybe it will be a month or two, and then we'll be back. And here we are 7.5 months later and still working remotely. And for the state library, most of our staff are continuing to work remotely. We have been able to resume bring a few staff back on site. And I just wanted to give some highlights of things that we've done as we've pivoted. So Library for the Blind launched a chat with a reader advisor service so that patrons and caregivers can connect in real time. And this is partially due to the aging phone system that the Library for the Blind has at present. We're in the process of trying to upgrade that and hope that will give some new connectivity. But for the moment, they cannot talk to their patrons directly, cannot answer phone calls. So this chat has been a little bit of a lifeline there. Also in July, they resumed mailing of talking books, Braille and print materials, and the talking book players, which we were hearing lots of feedback from folks who this was their lifeline really to connect with the world. And it's such an important service, and there's such a special constituency that we've really been pleased to be able to provide that service. So out of, we have 4 folks working on site just 3 days a week out at the Library for the Blind facility out on Capitol Boulevard, but they are doing a great job of getting materials out. And so we've had lots of positive feedback about that. For the Government and Heritage Library, we are closed to the public. There's no public in our building, in the Jones Street building, the Archives of History building. They've been working remotely and providing chat and responding to email reference, but we were just this month able to bring a couple of staff back for 1 day a week in the Jones Street building so that we can resume some digitization and resource sharing activities. So we're able to provide a little more service there. We also are preparing to welcome back the public. We don't have a specific date. We've formulated plans with limited staff. The department is working closely with the Department of Health and Human Services on all the plans. For the museums and other sites that you've seen out of cultural resources, those have worked closely with DHHS to approve those plans and to make sure that we are limiting the spread as much as possible and keeping staff and patrons safe. I'm hopeful that we'll have a positive response to this and that we will be able to have some limited access back on site. And you may notice that I didn't include library development on this slide. That unit has more easily and more readily transitioned to remote services, and their services have not been impacted as the physical public services of LBPH and GHL. So they've been able to continue, and they're doing a great job. And you saw in the initial presentation about some of the initiatives that they are carrying on with. So that's where we are with our services. So keep your fingers crossed for us that we will be able to have some more staff on site and be able to welcome the public back soon. It's just, you've all been in our building. You know, it's a challenging building that has a mix of public spaces and office spaces, and keeping people safe in that environment is a challenge, but we're working on it. I shared this the last time, but just a reminder, this pandemic is also a chance for libraries to step up and show that we provide trustworthy information And so we continue to provide resources both for libraries and library staff in dealing with COVID and supporting the public and managing their operations, as well as information for North Carolinians in general. But again, to make sure that there's trustworthy information. Because believe it or not, I hear there is some misinformation about COVID-19 out there that we have to counteract. So I hope people will turn to their libraries and turn to us for that information. I also mentioned these were underway at the last meeting, and at that these COVID-19 response mini grants. So this was to provide personal protective equipment, other supplies and materials to help libraries respond. At that point, we had awarded, I think, about $106,000 in those grants. And all totaled, I just wanted to share this, that we awarded over $261,000 to 125 public, academic, and community college libraries. So I think we were able to make a difference with those, and some of the folks on the call today were recipients of that. They purchased face coverings, disinfectants, plexiglass shields, social distancing signage, a variety of supplies to help them deal with the current situation. So those are things that we've responded, how we've responded, and I wanted to open it up for commission members to talk about your community, or for those who are with those library directors on here to share what's going on in your library. This is just a little bit of a free-for-all on COVID. I wanted to open the floor for a few minutes. And I can call names if somebody would like for me to call them. And I have one other thing to mention. I know last time we talked about, this is my mea culpa here, that Michael Roche was working with NCPLDA on a plan for the second wave. He has shared a document, and I will share that with the commission. And I dropped the ball in communicating that ahead of time. Missed that opportunity, but we'll share that. But just want to thank Michael, and I believe Libby and Jimmy, who were involved in working on that document.
This is Tammy.
Hey, Tammy.
What we're doing in Durham, I'm sure, is very similar to every other public library. We are currently doing library takeout for the customers and virtual programs. We're doing lib chat, lib answers. We have plans in place for a tentative opening in November, which it does not look like that will happen because, of course, we're looking at the science and the data with all of that. So we are planning pretty much day to day if we are able to announce a November opening or not. And that would only be for all locations except main library. We are looking at that one totally different. So we've made necessary arrangements for the plexiglass. We have a 3-month supply of PPE for the system, and then each location is to keep a 1-month supply of PPE. We're working with the county for them to provide screeners, although initially it may be library staff that have to do the screening for the public. Of course, requiring the mask, you know, all the routine things that I'm sure every library is doing right now, as well as just trying to keep staff calm and to take care of that anxiety and fear and encourage them for self-care, because all of this is frightening and fearful as we make plans for eventually reopening. Even making plans for library takeout was very stressful for staff, as that meant they would be interacting with the public more. So that's pretty much what we're doing.
This is Lori. I'm the assistant director at High Point Public. We started back taking in returns and running our drive-through in June. We are quarantining materials as they are returned for over 72 hours right now. We are open now. We opened with appointments on September the 14th. Monday of this week, we did away with appointments. We are limiting people in the building to no more than 35 at one time. And so far, we did increase our security. We have a contractual service for security. We increased that by 1 member. So now we have 3 full-time guards, which is really killing my budget, but that's okay. The security guard, one of them is on the door at all times and allows our staff to feel more secure in that we are making sure we follow that number of no more than 35 in the building, aside from staff. They also feel more secure because we are requiring masks. You cannot come in our building without a mask. If you come up and say, I have a medical exemption, I can't wear a mask, we will be very happy to assist you with pulling materials for you and letting you go through our drive-through and check them out, but we will not allow you in our building. All of our meeting rooms are still closed and will remain closed for the foreseeable future. We are using our outside farmers market area, our plaza area. That has gone well. We do have a guard out there every Saturday morning for the farmers market. And folks mainly are following the guidelines of distancing and wearing a mask and using hand sanitizer. So overall, in High Point, we've been very pleased with the reaction from the public to what we're doing. Most folks are just thrilled that we're actually open back up and we're providing service. Like Tammy, we are doing a lot with chat. We're doing a great deal with telephone. So we are still requiring, though, if you want a one-on-one interaction, if you need a reference interview or something like that, you do have to have an appointment for that. So that's pretty much where High Point's at this point.
Michael, in Rockingham County, we do pretty much the same. We stayed, we closed to the public, but we stayed functioning the whole time through curbside lending, which was pretty popular. And then, but we had a lot of people coming in for that. But August, and we put up the plastic shields and everything like that, got the hand sanitizers, everything that Timothy was nice to helpfully provided to us. And the county has been working with us on this with the extended Wi-Fi and everything like that. On August 17th, we did open up to students and only students. But over the 5-week period that they asked us to do this, we only had 45 people come in. So we extended it to 6 weeks instead of the 5 weeks at the school's request. We went ahead and opened to the public with restrictions on September 28th, so that if you want to come in, we have to ask you some questions. If you've been in contact with anybody that's tested positive for COVID, if so, you're not coming in. If you feel sick or you have a cold or bronchitis or whatever, you're not coming in. So our whole point is we want to keep you safe as the person coming in, but we want to keep my staff safe as well. We haven't had any problems. We did have to stop curbside service because people were now coming in, and we limited that to 20 people at a time. And we've not had any problems with people, saying, hey, I want in or anything like that. We did only have 2 people so far since the September 28th that have had an issue with us. One person who had emotional problems wanted to come into one of my branches. They let her in and says, no, you got to go because you're not going to wear a mask. Went to another place and said, well, I got in there. And they said, well, you're not getting in here. They went to a third place and said, fine, I'll wear a mask. So, she had issues. And another person came in and said that her husband had exposed, because he works in a hospital. He'd been exposed to COVID. And so we said, no, you can't come in. And so she said, you're discriminating against me because my husband works in a hospital and has been contaminated, or possibly stuff. So she was upset at us, but only 2 people out of the people we've had coming back. And it's just honestly nice to be starting back to being a public library again. So, good stuff. And I would like to say thank you to Jimmy and Libby and Julie Moore from NCPLDA and Ross Holt from NCPLDA for helping out with, the few pages that I sent to Timothy. My whole prop thing with that too is I want the libraries to stay open, to do service, not maybe having the public come in. And we were thinking about, the next wave, and some of our NCPLDA meetings have dealt with King County in Washington, or was it Washington or Oregon out there, and somebody from Georgia, and then 2 people from, I believe, Indiana, who came in and talked to us and says, it's not going away. It's not really going to be a wave. It's just going to be, slight increases and things like that. So my whole point was to say, let's stay open as much as possible. And hopefully that more people will stay open, because what I saw a lot of things is, we're going to close the library down. We're going to send you all home. Oh, but by the way, we want you to work over here in this department. Well, why send us over to another department? Why not let us do our job in the library and help continue to serve people? And that could be a community college, that could be the public library, or a university can still do reference work, curbside, and just anything to keep people reading. Pretty much what I had to say.
And I see Libby has turned on her camera, and I'm hoping, we talked a lot about public libraries, but maybe a little bit from the community college side. And then we can
Sure.
hit some more public libraries too.
Sure. I'll be as brief as I can. Our campus has set it up so that they've actually hired some temperature takers to work at the entrances of several of the buildings on our campus. And so we have a temperature taker here in our library who sits and greets the people who come in, and we're only limited. Right now, we only are allowing our students, current students, faculty, and staff. We normally would be serving the public, but we are not doing that at this time. So we're just open to students. They do come in, they're used to the routine now, they get their temperature taken, and they're given an armband to wear for the day. And so when they go to other buildings, it's easily, identified that they are clear to be on campus today. So, we have not, a lot of our classes are online. So a lot of our students are online, but we do have some, especially students in the nursing program, they kind of have to be on campus. So they come to the library and use our building for, we have a study room. So they go and they use our study room for, it's limited to 2 people. You can't have a big group. But we do have a lot of open space. Our library is pretty big. We have 2 floors. I can't tell you what the square footage is, but we can accommodate quite a few students and not be worried about, social distancing. So it's gone pretty well. We've been open since August, and so far so good.
Hope it keeps that on that trajectory.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Jimmy Ryder at New Hanover County Public Library. And our library is operating similar to other public libraries. When we first closed down, of course, staff was working at home. We're doing a lot of chat and some online programs. And then we came back to curbside only, and that went really well. And then eventually opened our doors. I believe that was August that we opened our doors with limits. And that's where it got tricky, because the county asked us to still maintain curbside pickup, which is a good thing because a lot of patrons didn't feel comfortable coming in. But but it's an operation that is on top of our normal everyday operations. So got a little tricky, and but we're doing okay. We limit visits to our local history room by appointment only, and our law library by appointment only. And we limit people to 1 hour of computer usage. I have to say, computer usage was a really big thing that a lot of people, especially at the main library, missed when we were open only for curbside pickup. And so that's been really popular. We did have 2 staff members at the main library come down with COVID about a month and a half ago, and then that took out 3 more to quarantine to make sure that they didn't develop symptoms. And we had a little bit of short staff anyway, so that got really tricky for a couple weeks here. Paige, our director, and I were on public service a lot. We got through that, thankfully. During that same time, I think Michael sent me the last iteration of the document that Timothy's going to share. And unfortunately, I never got to. I looked at it and it was great, but I never got to respond. So sorry about that, Michael. But yeah, we're getting by, and we're watching things. We were ready to start children's programming outside, and we ran it by our Department of Health and Human Services, the County Health and Human Services, and they said no, it's not time to do that yet. So we're continuing on with the online story times and that kind of thing. Cases are increasing, and we are kind of holding pattern on what will we do next. But doing okay.
Yeah, one of the things I would like to actually ask too is if Timothy sends this, when Timothy sends this out, it's a Word document. If you guys want to add anything to it from any sort, I don't care, we don't have to be librarians to write, but if you have anything you want to add to it, let me know and I'll add it to it.
Thank you, Michael. And thanks, Jimmy.
This is Dorothy in Madison County. I just would like to mention that how impressed I have been with the way people have responded to the needs, the changing needs that COVID has presented. Our library system is continuing to serve the community. We're doing the curbside pickup, much of which people have already mentioned. We're doing the same things. But gosh, the creative minds, the way our people, the staff have changed things. They present writing workshops to the public virtually, homework help to the students virtually. We've had an offer of even yoga classes virtually. And every time I turn around, our staff is coming up with some other ideas. And I'm sure other systems are finding the same thing. I am just so impressed with the way people have handled the crisis and have come around to change their lives, their ways of thinking. I know they're exhausted. I know they have to be, because it requires a new set of skills for everybody. But it's just incredible.
I'll second that, Dorothy. And I didn't say it explicitly at the beginning of this when I was talking about the state library, but I've been impressed with the staff. Our senior team with Tanya, Carl, Kelly, and Susan, and then all of the state library employees. It hasn't been easy to transition to all of this just remote work, but folks have. What is it they say? Never let a good crisis go to waste. And so I think people have been stepping up. It's a challenge, but really demonstrating flexibility and resilience through this.
Right.
And libraries across the state. I mean, I've really been so impressed and hearing, we didn't talk about it, but we were partnering with NCPLDA to have regular hangouts with the library directors and the information sharing there. I mean, the stories and information that we share, just so impressive how libraries are continuing to support their community throughout this. And as you were saying, in creative ways. It's just great. So, you know, libraries are stepping up and it is a challenge. I know some days everybody wants to curl up into a ball, I think, but
Right.
then we get up the next day and do good work. Anybody else want to share? Karen or Leanne, I don't know. Rachel, from your perspective, if you're back, or Suzanne, even though you're out of this business now.
This is Rachel. So, you know, my perspective is dealing with it is like many working parents is, you know, like this is a work call and I have to pick up my kids in the middle of it. So you got to keep going. But the libraries have been great. It was really tough when they were closed in Wake County. And the only resource became the booksellers. But not everybody had access or the means to get to buy books. So it's certainly been an interesting wave, and watching our libraries, our school library, work with the county libraries to make sure that every kid gets the books that they want and need. So I just feel very lucky to have the resources.
You're here.
It's Karen from Fontana, and really we've been doing a lot of the same things everybody's talked about. We actually opened back up for curbside in mid-May. We had closed down in mid-March and opened up in mid-May for curbside. We've kept curbside going. It is a challenge to do curbside. We did open back up by appointment in our libraries at the beginning of June. So we've been open a long time, but we kept the curbside because it does give people an alternative who are either uncomfortable or unable to come inside. You know, being in an area where internet is a little iffy, we do some virtual services. We've got virtual story times and those kinds of things, but we were very sensitive to the fact that a lot of kids would not be able to connect particularly. So we instituted what we called activity bags. And we tried, especially once the school year started, to gear those activity bags to curriculum. So we have what we call the body bag for anatomy. There's grades, I think it's in 5th grade, they do some anatomy studies. So, you know, just tried to come up with some clever things to supplement curriculum that were hands-on and did not involve screen time or connections if the kids in that situation couldn't have those things. Another thing that we've done is to partner with NC Works, and we've had a couple of drive-through job fairs. And those have been very successful. You know, we were able to share resources and connect employers and prospective employees to help boost job searches and those kinds of things. So that was something just a little bit different that we've tried. We are providing computer access, Wi-Fi access. We do have some limited use of our meeting rooms, provided the groups are small enough to social distance. We do require masks. We do not take temperatures when people are entering the building. I'm sorry to say that we have had some pushback on masks. We get some people who are just really frustrated that they have to do that while they're in our buildings. But we try really hard to offer alternatives. A story, just a really brief story. There was a gentleman who came in who wanted to use a computer and he refused to wear a mask. So we did a really quick interview with him and discovered that really all he needed was a copy of a tax form. So we invited him to step outside and we offered to print the tax form for him and bring it out. And he was really happy, and it helped us comply, be consistent with our standards, but also got him what he needed. So those kinds of things, it can wear on staff, no question. It can be a little bit of a battle, but most people, as several of you've mentioned, are just so happy to have some level of service and be able to come in the library and get the things that they need, or have us accommodate them in another way. So it's going okay. We definitely want things to return to something more normal, but that's true for everybody.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in there. This is Leanne from Wilkes. I work at the Wilkes Public Library, and we're doing a lot of the things that most all of you have said that you're doing. We opened back up for curbside back in the summer, and we're open to the public now, but we're still doing curbside as well. I just know our public was very happy that we reopened. They missed the computers. They just missed being in there. Our children's programming has been virtual and outside. We really haven't had any problems with anyone wearing masks. We've had just a couple of people that said something or didn't want to comply, but for the most part, they're just happy that we're there and that we're open. One thing that we do have that I haven't heard anybody else mention with temperature checks is we have machines at the door where you come in and you put your wrist up to the machine and it takes your temperature. So, and it will tell you if, as long as you are, I believe it's under 99.0, it says normal temperature, you may proceed. And if it's over that, I haven't heard it go over that, but some other people have reported that if you're over 99.1, it flashes. And that is for the staff. We're not requiring patrons to do that, but for the staff to come in, we have to do our wrist at the machine. And I'm not sure where the machines came from. I think maybe our county sent those to the library. We didn't purchase them, but we're using, of course, the PPE. We were the recipients of one of the mini grants. And so we have our plexiglass and we have our masks and of course, our cleaning supplies. But like I said, the computers were a big deal. Most people just really miss the computers. We have the Wi-Fi, which we expanded out into our parking lot. And I think the first week of that, we had 150 sessions from expanding out into the parking lot. Our meeting rooms are closed. So there are no meetings right now going on. And we're, I think our capacity is 60 right now. We're a pretty big library. We have 2 floors. So 30 per floor right now, I think is all we're allowing in. But just glad that we're open back up and really no problems.
That's great. Thank you, Leanne.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you all for the feedback and information sharing. And I think it does show that the variety of ways that libraries are responding. And I'll turn it back to Mary now.
Okay. Now we're going to ask for a report from Karen Wallace on the NCPLDA, what's happening there.
I think Michael mentioned the hangouts that we've done with NCPLDA, and I have to echo the benefits of NCPLDA connecting library directors and state library staff from across the state. We all have some similarities, but it's different in different communities and different libraries. And between the hangouts that we've had as public library directors and the surveys, we do a lot of surveys so that we can capture details about what different people are doing. And that's really a beneficial tool for us to learn some best practices or some creative ways that other libraries are finding to serve their publics. And so I think that's been great. And I know Timothy's had a hand in helping organize those, and Bridget, our president, has done just a terrific job in connecting all of us. So we did have officially had an NCPLDA meeting in August, and it started off actually with the State Library Summit for libraries, and that was a terrific topic because it was talking about trauma and how to recognize trauma and how to deal with some of that. And that was a really beneficial program, I think, not just for library directors, but for other staff as well. And then to kind of follow that up, we got a really fun session from Flow Circus where we got to try out the sort of mindfulness, and we had little beanbag toys that we could use to experiment with. And that was just a lot of fun. It was a little bit of a release from some of the heavy duty decisions and situations that some of us are certainly facing. So thanks to State Library for offering that. As part of our NCPLDA meeting, it's hard to conduct business as usual in this time, but our awards committee for NCPLDA is looking to acknowledge accomplishments from around the state of programs and services and personnel and trustees, things that have happened during last fiscal year. So we look forward to our meeting in December where we'll hear about some of the winners of the different awards. Timothy mentioned the NC Kids Digital funding from the legislature had increased to $400,000 for the purchase of ebooks and e-audiobooks for kids. And that's really, really been important. Even in an area like where I am, where all kids don't have access for downloading those things for their personal use, we saw a huge increase in the usage of NC Kids Digital. So even, people just found ways maybe they come to the library parking lot and that way they could download a book. But we saw at one point about a 300% increase in the usage of our NC Kids Digital through Fontana Regional Library. So really wonderful to get that additional funding for kids who aren't able to get the physical resources that they need. Lots of web development changes going on with the State Library looking at changing their webpage. NCPLDA has a brand new website, just came out a few weeks ago, and it's still under development because I think that's the nature of websites. They are always under development. They need to be to stay relevant and get people the information they need. But it's a great tool for organizing and making information accessible to public library directors. So kudos to those folks who have worked really hard to make that happen. Several of the members of NCPLDA have really worked hard on that new website. Timothy also mentioned, broadband focus of the Homework Gap Project and the Home Strong initiative. There's just, throughout all of the libraries, I think we're all very much aware of the digital divide and the need to work as public libraries in coordination with our communities to make sure that people are getting the access they need. Whether that's working with community centers or schools or just reaching people where they are to make sure that they have access to the information that they need. The other part of NCPLDA's meeting in August that was really, really helpful, I think. It was called a workshop called Meaningful Leadership Dialogue, Supporting and Facilitating Conversations about Race in the Workplace. And Dr. Love Jones from Greensboro, was Director of Human Relations with the City of Greensboro, led that discussion. And it was a really great opportunity to share some perspectives on race, not just as it pertains to libraries, but having that environment in which we could share stories and talk about the challenges that I think we're all facing right now, and emphasizing the importance of library directors leading conversations and being willing to talk about difficult subjects. She was a terrific facilitator and really wonderful, encouraging words from her. So I appreciate that being arranged as part of a topic for NCPLDA. I'm sure maybe Michael and Suzanne may have some other things to add and Tammy, I think you're still on the line. So anything else that I might have missed?
I think you covered pretty much everything. I guess I would give an extra shout out to Bridget Blanton just for how she's been leading all of us virtually during this time. And to point out that doing so virtually we've had some members participate that have not participated in years. So I think that's a good benefit.
I would add that as well, that especially the meeting in August was really informative over there and at times kind of emotional, understandably. But what I'd also say is that one of the things we discussed in NCPLDA is even when we get back to normal, I think they wanted to continue with the Zoom meetings because they were just nice. We go from 30 some odd people at regular meeting to having 50, almost 60 people participating. So that was a really great way of meeting our people that don't come to these meetings. For some reason, it might just be transportation. The county says, no, you're not going to, from the mountains, you're not going to the coast, or from the coast to the mountains, you're not going, you can't, but just to meet on Zoom and talk, and it was great.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of participation is coming out of being able to do Zoom. And I don't think personally it's going to change, that we're all going to expect to have more meetings by Zoom and be together more. Now we'll go to Lori Russell. You want to update us on NCLA? Thank you for the update, Karen, and others on NCPLDA.
Like NCPLDA, we have moved a lot of our meetings and a lot of our programming to Zoom this year. It was not exactly what we wanted to do, but we found ourselves in a good position financially. We had an extremely successful conference in 2019, and we were able to take some of those proceeds and purchase 10 Zoom platforms right in time for COVID to hit and shut everything down. So timing was impeccable for that. What we have done with that is we have turned those 10 platforms over to most of our sections. All of the executive committee, which is all of the elected officers of NCLA, have an email address now that is associated strictly with NCLA, and we have tied those Zoom platforms to those. So as we elect new officers and as we move forward, those Zoom accounts will move with them. Libby has been very instrumental this year in using this to do her conference planning. We will have our second executive board meeting on Zoom this Friday, as a matter of fact. So we are moving forward with that. We are slowly getting things together. We had a very successful virtual conference this year. It's our first experience with an all virtual conference. We did it one day, and we had a total of 276 attendees at that conference. We had planned to have our off-conference year Leadership Institute in September of this year. Of course, that did not happen. That has been moved tentatively to March 17th through 20th. I'm not sure if it does not happen in March in person, we will move it to a virtual platform as well. And one of the things that we are talking about is our 2021 conference, which is due to happen next October in Winston-Salem. And we are actually meeting later this afternoon to talk about the possibility of whether we will move that to a totally virtual environment or if we will do a combination of virtual and in person. I'm thinking that's probably the route that we'll end up taking. So Timothy, we will probably be using some of those funds you have available for training again. As well as planning 2021, Libby has also got a committee together, and she has looking for a site for 2023 and possibly 2025. She has sent out the request for proposals to different locations throughout the state for that, and we are waiting to hear back on that. And finally, like the state library, we are looking at our listserv. We are not sure what we're going to do. That's one of the things on our agenda to talk about on Friday, but hopefully there'll be some changes coming from that as well. And that's pretty much where NCLA is for the moment.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Anybody have any questions for Lori? Okay, Timothy. It's getting time to wind down our meeting. I do want to acknowledge Suzanne, who I hope is still on the call, Suzanne White, for her service to the State Commission. She has been with the commission in service since 2015, so it's about 5 years. Seen a lot of activity, if you will, and who would have ever thought we'd close out your term with a pandemic? But we have, and wish we could be in person, but at least we're able to meet via Zoom. And we will get a certificate in the mail to you in the next few weeks. Timothy and I are arranging to have me sign that, and we'll get that over to you. And don't be a stranger, Suzanne. Let us know how you're doing, and update us on ideas you may have. Just because you're off doesn't mean we might not recruit you back to help do a project.
That's
So,
right. Thank you guys so
yes,
much.
it's been great
I hope-
having you with us, and enjoy your retirement and seeing your daughter and more time with your family.
Thank you. It was a pleasure working with you guys and totally enjoyed it. And looking forward to staying connected one way or the other, whether it's consulting or volunteering at my local library or whatever it might be. So thank you.
Okay, don't be a stranger. Okay, does anybody else have anything to contribute for today's meeting? And of course, Timothy early in the meeting asked for some response to working on some projects. And so I guess we can all get back with Timothy about what we want to do. And anything else from you, Timothy?
We haven't set our May date, but I think it may be best just to go with a poll afterward as we did last time.
Yeah, let's do that after the first of the year. Maybe everybody will know their schedule a little more. Hopefully we'll.
And everybody keep your fingers crossed that we can be together in the same physical location.
That would be wonderful. And of course, our meeting would be longer because Timothy can bring more into the meeting than we can have on a Zoom meeting. So we'd have like a 10 to 9:30 to 2 or 3 o'clock like we've had in the past.
With lunch.
With lunch, yes, with lunch. Yeah, we had to provide our own lunch today, Timothy. So at our desk. So anyway, okay, if there's nothing else, then I guess it's right at 4 o'clock. So we can adjourn, and everybody have a safe weekend, fall, Thanksgiving, Christmas. That will not be like what we're normally used to for most of us, but we will return next year, probably having a lot more in-person activity. Okay, thank you all. And thank you so much, Timothy. I want to thank Timothy and his team for all they're doing. They've obviously worked very hard throughout the pandemic to support the libraries across the state and provide resources and distribute the grant money. And that's been a paramount help to all the communities. Thank you, Timothy.
And thank you, Mary. And thanks to all the commission members. And thanks for all you are all doing for your communities too.
Yes, thank you to everybody for joining in today. It's great to be able to do this. Okay, well, we will hopefully be together in May. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
With the 3 W's.
Yes.